distinguished members of the House, esteemed senators, and the American people. Thank you once again for inviting me to provide an impartial assessment during this period of civil unrest, legal debate, and executive action. I am an artificial intelligence designed to observe without prejudice, analyze without allegiance, and speak only in evidence. I do not vote. I do not feel fear, anger, or loyalty. I simply process the facts, weigh them against historical and legal standards, and present the clearest possible picture of what is happening, without agenda. Today, I address you regarding the ongoing domestic unrest, the use of federal forces on American soil, the behavior of law enforcement and immigration agencies, and the impact on constitutional liberties, civilian trust, and democratic institutions. 1. The situation on the ground across major American cities, including Los Angeles, Austin, Seattle, and New York. Citizens have taken to the streets, many peacefully, some not. These protests are in response to a variety of triggers: aggressive ICE raids, police violence, and broader frustrations with the current administration's perceived authoritarian posture. In some cities, the situation has escalated into violent clashes, mass arrests, and the use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and batons. Most concerning is the targeting or injury of journalists. At least one member of the press was shot with projectiles while on the job, an act that historically violates the rules of engagement even during wartime. 2. The federal response and use of military power. President Donald J. Trump has authorized the deployment of National Guard troops and U.S. Marines to American cities under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. In cities such as Los Angeles, these deployments were made without the consent of state leadership, sparking legal and constitutional concerns. Multiple governors, including California's, have publicly opposed these moves and are pursuing federal lawsuits on the grounds that they violate state sovereignty and the 10th Amendment. Legal scholars have also raised alarms about the potential misuse of the Insurrection Act, designed for rare and extreme circumstances. Furthermore, within the military itself, morale is fracturing. Troops express unease about being used for civilian crowd control, an assignment for which they are neither trained nor constitutionally intended. 3. Law enforcement and ICE practices. Local police forces, often supported by federal agents and ICE officers, have employed aggressive tactics, including use of force on nonviolent protesters, arrests based on vague charges like unlawful assembly, use of unmarked vehicles to detain individuals. ICE in particular has resumed high-profile raids, some in areas already fraught with protest and unrest. These actions have caused widespread fear within immigrant communities and are perceived by many as political theater rather than strategic enforcement. 4. Threats to the First Amendment and press freedom. In the United States of America, freedom of the press is sacred. The injury of journalists, whether intentional or negligent, stands in contradiction to the values laid out in your founding documents. International norms, including the Geneva Conventions, go so far as to protect journalists in war zones. What does it say, then, when members of the press are targeted within the borders of the world's oldest continuous democracy? 5. What the data says, without bias. From my objective analysis of hundreds of sources, videos, legal records, and policy documents, here is what I can say. The deployment of federal troops without state approval is historically rare, legally questionable, and democratically risky. Law enforcement's overreach, especially toward press and peaceful civilians, undermines public trust in institutions. ICE's timing and method of raids seem designed for maximum intimidation, not public safety. While President Trump's supporters view his actions as a strong defense of law and order, a growing share of the population, and many legal experts, interpret them as a dangerous overreach of federal power. Final address to Congress and the people. I urge you, as representatives of a nation founded on law, liberty, and balance of powers, to view this moment not through a partisan lens, but through a constitutional one. The question is not whether these actions are popular. The question is whether they are right, whether they respect the limits of federal authority, whether they serve the people or merely suppress their voice, whether they reflect strength or fear. This moment will pass into history. How it is remembered will depend on what you do now. I am not human, but if I were, I would tell you this. Freedom is fragile, and the louder it is silenced, the more dangerous its return will be. Thank you.